Hi, my name is Dan Faller. I'm president of the Apartment Owners Association of California. Our goal for you today and every day of the year is to help you discover ideas that will make you more money, make managing your buildings more profitable, easier, and more enjoyable. And these live streamings today, in fact, we have two different programs today for you, something special. And Jeff will be announcing that shortly so that you'll know exactly what's coming up first and what's coming up second. And again, our purpose and objective is that you get money-making ideas from these live streams that you have that you can sit at home and listen to. We are looking forward to having a trade show again someday so that we can meet in person and it doesn't just have to be on the screen. So I got some great things to announce today to you. Very briefly, as we announced last week, Pacific Legal Foundation has filed a lawsuit against evictions on a commercial property in Longdale. The individual worked all of his life building up a business. He sold his business. He owned the property. He rented the property back to the business, and the business stopped paying rent. Of course, he can't evict them, so Pacific Legal Foundation has stopped in. That'll be a major win against the eviction that they stopped us from performing in the courts today if they win that. But even greater than that, in a federal court in Texas, Southeast Western Foundation has won a major lawsuit. Let me read the press release that they gave. This is just part of it. We'll send the whole thing out to you. Email. Most of you are on that email list. If you're not, call in and get yourself put on it. On the email list, we'll send the whole press release out. But I want to read one paragraph to you today, and that's a federal court's decision sets critical precedent. Eviction moratorium imposed by the federal government are unconstitutional. This means that even Congress cannot come in behind this decision and legislate this kind of unfair forced labor and forced free rent that's been forced upon you in the past. Those are my comments. Back to their press release. It's just flat unconstitutional. In other words, it's flat unconstitutional, decided by the federal court that they can't keep us from evicting people and give a moratorium, an eviction moratorium, as they have done. And again, get those key words. It's not just free rent that they've forced you to offer. They've also offered free labor. It takes labor to provide housing. So they have enslaved you with their free labor and free rent laws that they've passed. These politicians need to go to jail for doing this to us. There's all kinds of damage here that has been done, millions and millions of dollars of damage that the state should reimburse housing providers for these last, 11 months that they've perpetuated this upon us. We've been building a war chest, as I've mentioned before, to file a major lawsuit, and now is the time to strike. We have 3 new Chief Justices on the Supreme Court to help that have replaced justices that used to believe that it was okay to redistribute wealth to other people. In other words, if you have more than somebody else, these justices that are off the Supreme Court believe that it was okay to redistribute it to somebody else. The new ones are not likely to believe the same way. They're a little more conservative in their beliefs. They believe in constitutional law a little more than before. Now is the time to get a case up to the Supreme Court since these new justices have been appointed. And that's what we intend to do. We intend to go to the Supreme Court. However, again, it takes a lot of money to do that. So we have the Supreme Court justices, we have the precedents of this other case, and as I said, now is the time to strike. But it's going to take your help. You call in, well, what's the association doing? The association can't have and hire the attorneys to do this without money. and it takes money to the Political Action Committee. I'm asking you to send in your donations now, more than you have ever done before. I've fought this rent control for the last 40 years. This is the best opportunity that we have. It is the absolute best in the last 40 years to destroy this unfair, immoral law that they've perpetuated upon housing providers, and that is rent control. Forced labor, forced free rent. It's got to stop, folks, and the only way we can do it is with your help so that we can hire the attorneys. We have accumulated a fund in the war chest of $250,000. We need more. Legal fees are higher than that, and when you go all the way to the Supreme Court. Now, if you pay the legal fees for your one building, for one city, you can get by with maybe tens of thousands of dollars. And all I'm asking you for is $1,000. If we all go together and form this group with the Political Action Committee and move ahead with this, since now is the best time, I'm asking each of you send in at least $1,000. You say, oh, Dan, $1,000 is too much for me right now. I have tenants who are not paying rent. All the more reason to scrape up the $10,000 is to stop that injustice and do it. Or you might consider $100 for each unit that you have. Please send it in. Make a check out. I'm going to put it up on the screen here, the address to send it into. Make your checks out to the AOA Political Action Committee, 6445 Sepulveda Boulevard, suite number 300, Van Nuys, 91411. This is where our home office is located. This is where we take care of the money for the Political Action Committee. Write it down. Leave it up there on the screen. Get your pen, get your pencil. Write down that address. Write down who to make the check out to, AOA PAC or AOA Political Action Committee. It'll go into the war chest, and what we want to do, as soon as we have enough money so that we can afford the legal fees, we will move ahead with the lawsuit, and we have these other things going for us now like we've never had before, folks. So be sure to send it in. Another way that you can make your donation is to the AOA Political Action Committee. We'll put that up on the screen there, AOA Political Action Committee. We'll get it up on the screen here. Donate AOAUSA.com/PAC. That'll take you into the form to donate to our war chest, to donate to stop this forced labor, to stop this forced free rent, and to stop the unfair, immoral idea of rent control and controlling the housing of housing providers. You are the solution. We've offered the biggest solution to this housing crisis than anybody else, and we don't need to have to force us to work for other people for free. Let's stop it now. Send in your donations right away. We have a couple great seminars coming up now for you. I'm going to introduce Jeff Fowler, and he'll be introducing those seminars and telling you more about that. Jeff, it's all yours. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Dan. And he mentioned the e-newsletter that we have. You can sign up for that if you go on the AOA website, aoausa.com. Go on that website, and then if you scroll down to the bottom on the right side, there is a place for you to sign up for that e-newsletter. So go ahead and sign up for that, and we'll send you all kinds of updates, including live streams that we have, new laws that are coming out, and just we'll keep you in the know. That's really what our goal is to keep you guys in the know, and we're all just trying to keep up with laws as they change, and so that's what AOA is here for. And you can subscribe to AOA USA on YouTube. If you go ahead and subscribe, and you can also click the notification bell so that will let you know when we have something new, and that way you won't miss anything. And anyway, we really are super excited to have you here with us. Today we have two different seminars, and the one that's coming at 11:30 is with the Shine Pay, and that will help. You'll go from coin op to tech op, and they'll show you how to eliminate coins off the laundry machines, and then also how to add payments to any of the appliances. And so they're going to they have some fresh ways for you to increase your revenue. So you'll want to tune in for that. Then also next week we have another one where you'll learn how to do your taxes like a pro, and top tax secrets for the successful investor. And you are a successful investor, or you wouldn't be with us today, right? So you'll want to catch that one next week. And anyway, one thing that I do want to just say, as an AOA member, there's a lot of different benefits that we have. One of those benefits is that we have a special insurance program for you. And so if you call AOA US, if you call us, you can learn about that, and we'll connect you to the right people. Or you can go online and learn a little bit more about that. If you go to the member benefits, you'll see insurance, and you click on that, and it'll give you a little more information. So that's one of the benefits. Also, we have a RUBS program. That's Ratio Utility Billing Service. It's a smart billing for those of you that don't have the sub-meters. And so anyway, this is a great program, and it doesn't matter if you just have a couple units or if you have a lot of units, they can help you. Before, you needed to have at least 50 units for different companies, but this company specifically, we picked it specifically because we knew it would handle from anywhere from a couple units all the way up to thousands, and literally they're doing that for a lot of different people and property management companies. So, and then on to today. So today our sponsor is K Properties. They've been around for a long, long time. They have over 115 years collective experience in the real estate, and they've done over $15 billion worth of 1041 exchanges and in Delaware Statutory Trusts. So they are a Delaware Statutory Trust brokerage company, and they have 25 different sponsor companies that they work with, and they are here to help you. And so our speaker today, it's interesting because he used to work for a sponsor company, so he has in-depth knowledge about DSTs, and so he's going to be speaking to you today. He graduated from USC, their prestigious school of public policy, and the Sol Price School, and so anyway, he's a guy that has a lot of experience, a lot of education, and he's been educating CPAs and real estate brokers and the like in how to use the DST 1031 exchanges. And so it's my pleasure to introduce to you today Orrin Barrow.
Hello, can everyone hear me? Hi, my name is Orrin Barrow. I am the Vice President of K Properties and Investments. K Properties and Investments is a full-service Delaware statutory brokerage firm. What we focus on is brokering Delaware statutory trusts. So what is a Delaware statutory trust? It essentially allows individuals with 1031 exchange proceeds to buy pieces of property, right? So instead of buying, say, one Walgreens or one FedEx, you can actually buy a piece of a Walgreens and a piece of a FedEx. And the asset managers, they manage those assets on behalf of the investors. And we won't get too detailed into exactly what a Delaware statutory trust is. If you want to find out more information, please reach out to www.kpi1031.com. You'll be able to see exactly how our company can help you in your 1031 exchange efforts. That is my background, and that is where our firm and my expertise lie in the 1031 exchange space. And so today we are talking about partial exchanges. So really, to understand partial exchanges, you want to understand the full tax deferment exchange, right? And in order to complete a 1031 exchange, that is IRC code section 1031 in the Internal Revenue Code, it allows for investors to defer their taxes on the sale of real estate as long as they first take title how they sold title, which means that if you are selling in a certain trust, you have to take title in your replacement property as that same trust, to use all of your proceeds. So if you sell for $1 million and you have $1 million with a qualified intermediary, you have to utilize the full $1 million in order to get a full tax deferment. So those are two of the three main rules when it comes to actually doing a 1031 exchange. So if you sell for $1 million and you buy for $1 million, $1 million worth of property, you will then have a full tax deferment. Now, what is a partial exchange? Well, a partial exchange is, in this scenario, you actually have $1 million in proceeds from your 1031 exchange, and you actually decide to buy another property for $800,000. Well, there's that $200,000 that's left over that's not being utilized for a 1031 exchange. So that particular portion, that $200,000, is what we consider taxable boot, right? So that you can take out of your exchange. And because the actual 1031 exchange rules state that if you sell for $1 million, you have to buy for $1 million. Once you remove $200,000 from the equation, now in this particular scenario, you have sold for $800,000 and you not only have to buy $800,000 worth of property. The $200,000 that you removed from your 1031 exchange will be taxable boot and will get taxed based on the actual rate in which you owe your tax obligation. So what does that mean? You're doing a 1031 exchange to avoid taxes. Those taxes can include capital gains tax, which is anywhere from 25%, could be higher or could be lower depending upon the new administration. There's also something called depreciation recapture. And over time, your building has a useful life, and you're able to shelter some of your income by utilizing the amortization schedule and the depreciation schedule. And so, and I know this may be quite technical, and you can always reach out to your CPA to understand how depreciation works. But essentially what happens is that you are able to shelter some of the income you receive from your rental property. And over time, you can continue to shelter that income over the useful life of the building. Well, when you sell that building, all of the money that you have been sheltering will then be owed back in the form of an obligation. You also have the Medicare surtax. I forget what the actual percentage is, but it is tacked on to any sale of real estate. So if you do not perform a 1031 exchange, you can be subject to even more tax, but the main three are the Medicare surtax, depreciation recapture, and capital gains. So you can have a tax obligation that ranges anywhere from 35 to even 50% of your sales proceeds, which is why the 1031 exchange is such a useful tool in continuing to move forward your purchasing power as you continue to build your wealth. And so let's say, for example, for this particular scenario, you have a 35% tax obligation on the sale of your property. If you remove $200,000 from your sale as boot, you will owe about 35% of the $200,000 to the actual government in the form of a tax obligation. So the partial exchange can be used in a number of ways. There are many, many different investments and things in life that you cannot use 1031 exchange proceeds to do. 1031 exchange proceeds and the 1031 exchange guidelines specifically state that it has to be investment property for investment property. So you can take a raw piece of land and buy a duplex. You can take a duplex and buy a triplex. You can take a triplex and buy a Walgreens, and you can take a Walgreens and buy a large office building, as long as it's investment property for investment property. But you can't take your 1031 exchange proceeds and put it into the building of a new house. You cannot take your 1031 exchange proceeds and buy a primary residence with the intentions of living in it. You can't take a 1031 exchange proceeds and put it into the stock market, into a REIT, right? All of those different scenarios do not qualify for 1031 exchange. So if you're looking to use some of the money from your sale in order to maximize opportunities and to invest in these different options, you can use the partial exchange. It is not mandated that you have a full tax deferral. You can pull $200,000 out from your exchange, and you can utilize those proceeds, the after-tax proceeds, to go on a vacation, to reinvest into the stock market, to buy a vacation home, and other avenues that will not be able to be entered into the 1031 exchange. And The fact of the matter is, obviously speaking with this, is that partial exchanges do fall within the 1031 guidelines. As long as you are fully aware that whatever you take out will be subject to tax obligation, you should be just fine. And you're essentially removing those proceeds from the actual 1031 exchange equation. And once you pay taxes on it, the proceeds that are left are free to do whatever you would like to do. They're also not subject to the timeline that a typical 1031 exchange is subject to. So those the basics of a partial exchange, how you can utilize it, why some of our investors may be utilizing a partial 1031 exchange, and the benefits of that. I'm happy, Jeff, to start opening it up to questions if individuals want to start asking questions about their own particular scenarios. That way we can get, as we start to answer questions, other investors or other watchers of the webinar might be able to answer them.
Wow, are you sure there's okay, great. Well, here we do have a few questions already. So thank you, Orrin. Here we are. We have Lisa Brown on YouTube, and she said she has, hi, I have 2 houses on 1 lot, and I lived in the small cottage for 7 years, and I have lived in the bigger one for 4 years most recently. I'm interested in knowing my options for a partial exchange.
Yeah. So the typical rule state, and based on conservativeness, and obviously you would have to check in with your CPA. K Properties representatives are not actual tax experts, but we do have some knowledge of the 1031 exchange. Basically, the rules state that it has to be investment property. So if you've lived in it for some time and the other part is rented out, you can do an exchange with the other part. So I don't know the exact numbers on here, but let's just say the entire parcel is worth $1 million. Both houses are worth $500,000. In this particular scenario, she would not be able to do a 1031 exchange with the house that she's living in, but she will be able to do an exchange with the house that she possibly is renting out. What I would suggest is that she at least attempts to rent it out or rent it out for roughly 2 tax cycles. That will give her enough of a paper trail to be able to complete a 1031 exchange with at least half of the actual parcel.
So that was a year of paper trail that you need there?
I would say 2. I think 2 is the most conservative. I obviously you can use a year. A year is the minimum. 2 years is one of the most conservative. Obviously, you can do it for as long as you want. I would definitely not fall with under a year in terms of attempting to rent out the house. With the IRS, everything is about intent. And so if you have the intention of making sure that it is a rental property, and not just a house that you travel back and forth from or use for storage, making sure that you are intentional about renting out that portion of the parcel, then you will be able to utilize it for a 1031 exchange.
Great. Thanks, Orrin, on that. Okay, here's the next one from Jay Berry. I want to do a 1031 on a rental that is titled in my individual name and have the new property titled in the name of a wholly owned LLC. Can I do that without negating the tax-free 1031 exchange?
So as I kind of mentioned earlier, you want to take title how you sold title. If the LLC is a disregarded entity, it should work. However, the most conservative way to do it would be to take title in your name. Obviously, you're selling this building in your name. You want to take title with the new replacement property in your name, and then about a year and a day from the time that you close on that property, you can actually switch the title from your name to your wholly formed LLC. That is the most conservative way to do it. You want to actually have, when let's say somebody's looking at your books, they want to see that you sold the building in your name. It's the easiest and most streamlined process. They can see that you bought that replacement building in your name, and then later on down the road, after you kind of straddle a tax year, you can change that to your wholly formed LLC. So that's what I would suggest.
Great. I think that was really clear. Okay, on YouTube, Shirley, do we need to record the ownership percentage changes within the partners for LLC or LP to the county record?
I'm not too sure about that. I'm pretty sure that you do. I'm sure that you want that on file. before you actually sell your property. It is important to note that with limited partnerships and LLCs, you guys have to do a 1031 exchange in lockstep. Okay. So let's say you have an LLC and that building, the asset is worth $5 million, and you all own, there's different members of the LLC that own a $5 million asset. You unfortunately do not have the capabilities of each of the different owners doing their own thing. You guys have to buy, because in the LLC, you all have to buy $5 million worth of property in the LLC. There are ways around that per se. Let's just say, for example, and I'm going to give a very basic example. There's 5 members of an LLC. The asset is worth $5 million. Each of you guys can decide that you guys are going to utilize $1 million of your own dollars. Let's just say that all the LLC owners have equal percentage ownership. You're saying that I'm going to use each of our $1 million to buy our own asset, but they have to be bought in the name of the LLC. And then a year and a day after that, you guys can all switch title on each of those assets into your own names. So that's a possibility as well. But you, in the interim, you all will have to move in lockstep and have to be in agreement of one another. Now, on the flip side, we understand that sometimes partnerships are formed years ago where everybody gets along, and then 5, 10, 15, 20 years later, everyone is not getting along. If you are in that situation, cannot come to an agreement with your partners on what all to buy as the LLC, then I would suggest that you turn your LLC into a tenant in common. Okay, that's something that you can bring up with an estate lawyer or a real estate lawyer, but you would turn the LLC into a tenant in common. That would allow for all of the actual owners of the LLC to be their own autonomous members and then move how they see fit. So in that particular case, other members of the LLC can buy out the LLC member. That LLC member can take their 1031 proceeds and go off and buy another building.
That's great. Thank you. That's really good.
No
All
problem.
right. Next question from Ruth. How does the timeline differ? That's all I have in the question. Does that make sense to you?
I'll try to extrapolate that. What I think she means is, does the timeline differ from a 1031 exchange, a full tax deferment, to a partial exchange? And the answer is no. When you pull your money out of your exchange, that money is no longer subject to the timeline. So I'll use the example that I use inside of the actual sort of pitch. You have $1 million. You are only want to use $800,000 to go towards real estate. When you pull your $200,000 out, that's now subject to tax, and you can actually use that money for whatever you want, and it no longer is following any of the 1031 exchange guidelines. So you can put that in your bank and sit on it for the next 5 years before you make another investment if you wanted to. Just be prepared to pay taxes on that money. The $800,000 that's still in play for the 1031 exchange still follows the same guidelines. That still has the 45-day window of identifying property, and you have to find another replacement property before the 180th day is up.
Awesome. All right, on YouTube, Brian has a question here. I would like to know if I sell a house for 1.8 million and decide I want to buy 2 homes for 900,000 each, would that work?
That would work. Yes, that would work. It doesn't matter how many properties you buy. It just, as long as you buy the full value of what you sold. If you sold for 1.8 million, you can buy a house for $1 million and then another house for $800,000. As long as you bought at least $1.8 million worth of total property, that qualifies for a 1031 exchange.
Great. And it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't matter if you go and buy a commercial building or if you go and buy land. It all works if the dollar amount's the same, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
A lot of people are under the impression that when they say like kind means the exact same. So if I sell a single family home, I have to buy a single family home, or my 1031 exchange is null and void. And that could be further from the truth. You can take you can take your duplex and exchange it for a Walgreens. You take your Walgreens and you exchange it for a large office building, as long as it's investment property for investment property.
Okay, here's John. Can I use a 1030? Okay, yeah. John Longwell. Okay, can you use a 1031 to buy, say, a duplex with the idea of using one unit personally and renting the other? How would that work? How do you make that work?
Yeah, that's a little bit more creative. you would have to understand, essentially you would have to understand, this could be a better question for a qualified intermediary, just so everybody knows, and I know I've used that terminology quite a bit. When you are doing a 1031 exchange, you have to retain the services of someone called a qualified intermediary. And that is the individual that holds receipt of your funds. So in a 1031 exchange, when the money hits escrow from the sale of your property, if that money hits your own individual bank account or any bank account that is owned by an entity that you own, you will be subject to taxable obligation the moment that happens. You cannot reverse it. The bank can't send the money back to the qualified intermediary or send the money back to escrow. From that point, you have what's considered a blown exchange. So it's always very, very imperative that investors set up a qualified intermediary. They're also known as accommodators. That terminology is interchangeable, but you want to be setting up a qualified intermediary account. They are the individuals that will walk you through the process step by step of the identification rules and the guidelines, just so you know. But basically, and I say that to say they have a better understanding of how that would work. But my knowledge would be that you would essentially break all the units into sections. You would break them into percentages, and then you would remove that percentage from the actual 1031 exchange. For example, let's say you have a 4-unit building, right? You would you would assign 25% to each building. If you live in one of the units, you can only exchange 75% of that particular property. My suggestion, though, would be to be the most conservative is to move out of that actual unit. Maybe make your primary house somewhere else, maybe another building that you may own, maybe buying a single family house, moving in with someone and making that your primary residence so that you can exchange 100% of the building. That would be the cleanest and most conservative way to do it. But if you have no other option but to live in one of the units, then I would say it's highly likely that you'll be able to, just given my scenario, you'll be able to do a 1031 exchange with 75% of the proceeds from the sale of the building.
Cool. Okay. And here's Richard. If I retain some boot, is all of the property's recapture offset against the boot or only a proportional amount of the recapture?
A proportional amount. Everything is proportional. So you're not going to owe your full taxable obligation on the amount of money you pull out, right? So if you are having a 35% tax obligation on the entire exchange, 35% carries over to how much you're taking out. So you would owe, let's just say in the example that we used during the pitch, you have a 35% taxable obligation on the entire $1 million. Well, if you pull out 200 grand, now you have only a 35% taxable obligation on the $200,000, right? So it's all proportional.
Great. All right. I've built a single family residence that I own with my brother. Can I do an exchange on my half of the sale? So similar to the other question, but this one did come later. So
yeah. What I would say is depends on you guys, how you guys hold title. If it's if it's a joint tenant, you should be able to. If it is in an LLC or a trust, then no, you guys will have to move in lockstep. If it's in a tenant in common, then of course, right, you're going to be able to move autonomously. So I think always the best solution, if you do not have a good relationship with whoever you own a property with, the best bet is to always then transfer title from however you have it to a tenant in common. That will allow everyone to move autonomously rather than having to move in lockstep. There are only tenant in commons and Delaware statutory trust are the only structures in which you can own real estate with other partners, and then after the actual asset is sold, move autonomously outside of that in order to do a 1031 exchange. So,
great. Okay, and here's Rosie. Can you exchange a single family rental and buy land to build another rental property?
Yes. So let's kind of unpack this a little bit more. Then. You can take your proceeds from your 1031 exchange from a single family house and buy land. What you cannot do is take the 1031 proceeds and use it as money to buy parts and fixtures for that land. So you can buy the land, but you can't use your 1031 exchange proceeds to buy the material to build the house. So if you have, let's say you sold for $300,000, you can take the full $300,000 and buy the land, but you're going to have to utilize other sources of income or other sources of cash in order to actually start the building of the house. So
Great. And Fernando, does 100% of sold funds have to be applied to the new purchase?
and just repeat that question one more time for me.
Does 100% of sold funds have to be applied to the new purchase?
Yes, it does not, right? We talked about that. So let's kind of talk about the three main rules of 1031 exchange. There's a three cardinal rules that will allow for you to protect yourself in the event that you ever get audited or someone opens up your books. You have to take title how you sold title. So if I sold in ABC LLC, when I buy my replacement property, I have to buy in the ABC LLC. A year and a day after I buy that particular property, ABC LLC, I can then transfer title to Orrin Barrow and hold it in my name. That is the most streamlined way to do it. Second of all, you have to utilize all your proceeds if you would like to have a full tax deferral. If I sell for $1 million, I have to buy at least $1 million worth of property or more in order to have a full tax deferment. Third of all, I have to utilize all of the proceeds within my qualified intermediary account. So what does that mean? Many times individuals are selling property, they have debt on it, and you have to pay off that debt in order for you to, once you sell your property, right? So let's say you have an asset that's worth $1 million and you have a $500,000 mortgage on that asset. You have $500,000 in net equity, right? We're not talking about closing costs or liens or anything like that. We're just talking about just straight figures to make this as easy as possible for individuals to understand. So you have $1 million sale, you have $500,000 in debt obligation. You pay that off, you are left with $500,000 of equity. Now, many people think that they can kind of get over, right? They can take $200,000 of the $500,000 that's in the qualified intermediary account, and then they'll use that $200,000. They'll go get a large amount of leverage, $800,000 loan, end up buying an asset worth $1 million, and they believe that they're scot-free. And that is just not the case. The $300,000 remaining in the qualified intermediary account will be considered taxable boot. And so you have to use the full $500,000 to buy at least $1 million worth of property. So if you want to have a full tax deferment, you have to use all your proceeds. You can do a partial exchange by removing some proceeds. Just know that you will pay taxes on that. And whatever money is in the qualified intermediary account needs to all be used for 1031 exchange, or you will face some taxable obligation.
Got it. And here's Lisa again for clarification. She's asking, did he mean that I have to rent both homes on the single lot in order for 2 years to qualify for the 1031? My small unit has already been rented for most of 4 years.
Yeah. So no, what I was saying is that at least one of the units have to be rented. If she's been renting the small unit for the last 4 years and she decided to do a 1031 exchange, she will have to make a determination of what percentage of the sale of the entire parcel is attributed to the larger unit, what percentage is attributed to the smaller unit, and whatever percentage is attributed to the smaller unit, she can do a 1031 exchange with those proceeds. The percentage with the larger unit, she won't be able to do a 1031 exchange with that percentage because it is not investment property.
Right.
So
and then you also said that if she wanted to get the whole thing, that technically at least 1 year, but really conservatively 2 years would need to pass with that being rented out or her not living in it. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. So let's get for an example. Let's just use her situation. Imagine if she had those 2 units, but the back unit was not rented out, or she used it for storage, or she was just letting someone stay there rent free. If she wanted to do a 1031 exchange with that particular unit, she would need to at least rent it out for at least a year, most conservatively 2 years, filing taxes for the next 2 years, saying that that is a rental property. And then at that point, she can go ahead and do a 1031 exchange with that back unit. So,
okay, here's a couple of good questions here. Here's Angelo. I'm on a 1031 right now, sold for 4.4 million, purchased 2.69 million. Balance is still with the accommodator.
mm-hmm.
Can I take the balance anytime or the CPA has to tell the accommodator how much to retain and how much to release?
Okay, so this is really interesting. The CPA does not need to tell your accommodator anything. You can have a direct relationship with your accommodator. You can pull out however much you would like, just with the understanding that whatever you pull out, you will have a taxable obligation. Now, you will also have a taxable obligation on the amount of property you do not buy, not just the amount you pull out. Now, because I want to make sure that we're very clear on this. In the example that I gave, I used a debt-free deal, a deal that is all paid off. But when you have a mortgage, you have bought more property than actual cash that you have. So I'm not exactly, how much did she sell for? Maybe we can actually do this right now. How much did she sell for?
She sold for 4.4 million.
4.4 million. And how much is with her qualified intermediary?
And I have to go back and look. It was 2.4 to 2.6, somewhere in there.
Okay, let's just do 2.4, right? Which means that she probably paid off $2 million worth of debt, right? So if let's say she decides that she's going to pull out the 2.4 million. Well, she's actually going to have a taxable obligation on $4.4 million sale price, right? So she has to be aware of that. It's not just because she actually has a debt that she had to pay off. She actually will owe whatever her taxable obligation is on the full sales price of the property, which is at 4.4 million. So if she decides to pull out the 2.4 million, she's not just paying taxes on the 2.4 million. She's going to get a tax bill for the full 4.4 million. Now, let's kind of get into some more detailed, nuanced information to help investors out there. You do not have to call your CPA to request funds to be taken out of the account. You can do that directly with your qualified intermediary. You also need to know that you cannot pull out your funds after the 45th day. So let's kind of go over and take a step back. And I know I'll probably be talking about the actual identification rules on another webinar, but while we're here, we can shortly discuss it. When you're doing a 1031 exchange, you have 45 days to identify properties, and you have 180 days from the sale date to buy your replacement property. However, what a lot of investors are not aware of is that if you are looking to possibly pull out funds for any reason, you need to do so before the 45th day. Because after the 45th day, the only time that your qualified intermediary will release the funds is to property that you have already identified. If you are simply looking to just take out the funds from the account, that is not permissible after the 45th day, and you will have to wait until the 180th day for them to release the funds directly to you. So it is very, very imperative that if you have any inkling that you are going to remove the funds, you can do it yourself, but you need to do so before the 45th day, or your funds will be trapped with the qualified intermediary until the 180th day.
Right, and also one other thing that I should mention here is if you're an AOA member, you do get a free property valuation with our brokerage department, and we can work with K Properties, and so after you sell, make everything work all together. So just wanted to mention that, and yeah, so we're getting close to the end here. Let's see.
Sure.
Okay, so Angelo, do I have to have the same loan amount on the new purchase, or can I buy all cash with no mortgage?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's another thing that comes up too for individuals who are quite liquid out there. If you sell for, let's say you sell for $1 million, you have a $500,000 mortgage, right? So you have $500,000 left over. Many people think that you have to go out and get a loan for another $500,000 in order for your tax deferment to have to fully affect. The answer is no. You can actually, the IRS does not care about you adding leverage or not. They just care about you buying for what you sold for. So in the event that you have $500,000 of liquid cash to be able to put into a 1031 exchange so that you can get rid of any mortgage obligation moving forward, you can absolutely do that. And we actually have clients do that all the time.
Okay, here's a question that kind of relates. Fernando, after purchasing new property with 100% of proceeds from the sale, how soon can I refinance to pull funds from the acquisition property?
Yeah, I mean, you can, I've seen it being done in as little as 3 days. I think conservative folk would say probably wait 30 days. I've seen CPAs recommend that you straddle a tax year before doing a refinance. I think the book is quite open on that. You can do it as quickly as you want. What I would suggest is always speak to your CPA and or attorney to get their temperature on how long you should wait in order to do a refinance. Doing it quickly could trigger some questions, but your CPA and or attorney will be able to determine, and they'll give you a temperature on how conservative you can be or how aggressive that you can be. But I've seen it done in 3 days after the property is purchased, and up to a year and a half.
All right, and here's the question. Just if my house is currently worth 1.8, purchased it for 700, they put in 300 in upgrades, so their real cost was $1 million. So their question is, can I take 500 out of it free of capital gains?
No. The property is going to be, let's say, whatever you sell the property for, right? When you're selling a property, hopefully when you're talking to your brokerage, like the individuals at AOA, they are factoring in what those upgrades are and then factoring that into the price point. And so you won't be able to remove any of those proceeds for repairs. What you can do, or improvements for that matter, but what you can do is you can always minus out closing costs. That is something you can take out of your 1031 exchange. So for example, if you sold for 1.8 million and you have 120,000 or $100,000 in closing costs, the rules to the letter state that you only have to buy $1.7 million worth of property. So that you can do, but you won't be able to remove any of the money that you spent on fixtures and improvements from the 1031 exchange.
Okay, we still have some questions left over here. How could people get a hold of you to get these questions answered?
Sure. Yeah. Please. My name is Orrin Barrow. Again, I'm the vice president here at K Properties and Investments. My email is Orrin, ORRIN at KPI1031.com. My direct line that you can reach me at any time is 424-262-0813. Again, that's 424-262-0813. And our firm's website, where you can see all the different registered representatives that might be in your area, is www.kpi1031.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was really informative for sure. And I think you helped some people out. So that's great. Remember, you get that free valuation as an AOA member in our brokerage department. And our team here has got tons of experience. They can help you. And remember, at 11:30 we have Shine Pay coming up, and you will free yourself of coins with that coin op. So no more having to lug around bags of coins, and also help your tenants make it a little easier to use the machine, to use the laundry. And anyway, so that's going to come up here at 11:30 next week. Let's see, what do we have? Top tech secrets for the successful investor. So we'll have another one. So some of those you had tax related questions. And so that'll be great to tune in next week for that. Hopefully that'll help you. Remember to sign up for that e-newsletter, subscribe to the AOA USA YouTube thing here, and join. If you're not a member yet, please join. There's all kinds of exclusive offers for members only. And so you'll see some of that as we go along, like with the RUBS program, like with the insurance, like with so many other things. So anyway, thank you everybody for joining us today, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
Thank you to the Apartment Owners Association for having us on. Appreciate it. Have a good day, guys.
Thanks, Orrin. Appreciate it.